Okay, let's kick off this second episode. I am excited that we're actually having a second episode, figuring out after the pilot how to launch and get live on some of the key podcasts. A little bit more complicated than I initially had known, but it's quite seamless once you actually get a system that's working. So glad to be kicking off the second episode. And the first one I spoke about the first 5 days, and my initial idea for a follow-up was talking about the 30, 60, 90 and the benefits, despite I think how it's misused, as I spoke about previously. But yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of want to leverage this podcast to talk about the things that I want to talk about that really excite me and get me interested in product management. And so instead of going down that path, I'm going to take this episode to talk about great sign-up workflows that I have seen work really well and how you can leverage them to have a seamless process from sign-up to onboarding to return processes as well. And it really comes down to three things. So to not bury the lead, I'm going to talk about a sign-up workflow I found through a company called ProjectionLab, which I just absolutely loved as a user, but then also found really interesting as a product manager. From an onboarding workflow, I'm going to talk about an application called Kudos, which I think has a really interesting way of what I like to think of is sort of tasting the batter as you're baking the cake when it comes to an onboarding process. And then the third one, it's not a very specific application that I'll be referencing, but it's really the concept of magic link and passkeys for return processes. So to sort of start on the sign-up process processes can be so long and way too heavy for a user to actually decide, I'm going to go through this friction to get to using an application. And it's something that I've certainly struggled with in the past when trying to design an onboard, sort of a sign-up process multiple times for a product. And what I have found is a lot of times you're trying to really trim it down to how many few steps can you actually get it down to in order to make your application work. I found this company, though, called ProjectionLab, and they're a company that I found during a process of relooking at my personal finances. And ProjectionLab enables you to put in your salary, your expected bonuses, growth rates on things, your investments, your portfolios, 401ks, really everything, right? Vacations you want to take, anything you want to sort of think of as a variable on any sort of cadence that you may or may not have, put it into your plan and it'll sort of graph out what your financial projections will be. A really interesting product. And for this type of a product set, you can think the onboarding would be pretty hard and heavy in sort of one of two ways, or at least the sign-up process, right? One, which you have to put in all that information. And then two, though, you have like standard sort of sign-up processes. If you want to try to pull bank account information, you have to go through Plaid and go through, multi-factor authentication pieces. ProjectionLab, though, sort of takes that process and turns it on its head, where when you go to their website and try to sign up, they have an option to sign up directly, as you can, but then they have one that says, get started now, sign up later, which is really interesting. Like, how do you sort of do that? And you can go through and just start entering all your information in without ever signing up. You have some companies out there that allow you to do this, so it's not so disparate just yet, but you can enter in all your information. It builds out the chart live as you're going through it, and you get this great projection at the end. Really love it. Think it looks great. I leave, and I come back to the application a day later to try to look at my projections again. And that's when I recognize that I never had signed up. Most applications at this point would say start fresh, right? Now you've lost your data. But what ProjectionLab, I think, recognizes is if you do that, a lot of people just aren't going to rebuild it and they're just going to go somewhere else. Instead, they've stored all your information in the browser cache. Now, what they do is they show you all that information, sort of have a banner in front of it as well that says, you have to sign up if you want to keep this information. We've still got it. But if you don't, we will now wipe your data, which I find to be a great sort of point of, pressure to get the person to sort of recognize the value that they'll lose, while at the same time enabling them to still get that value that they previously had and build from there. Now, as a customer, I love this because I got started so fast. I never had to hand over my email or had to create any password. Didn't have to do any of that. I could just get started and run, which is a great, easy, seamless process to move through. And as a product manager, I love it because I now have people coming back to my application. They have actually used this product and they want to come back now. And I'm able to now show them that I still have their data and I can still leverage and, incorporate it into, a long-term plan for them as long as they actually sign up for the product. And so as a customer, I haven't yet lost my data. I still have this sort of second chance to go through that process. And as a product manager, it works really well for what I would think would be a great return process. So I just really found that to be interesting. A lot of companies have ways where you can maybe get started. You can think of something maybe like a Google Sheets possibly, where you can get started without actually having to, create an account. But if you leave, you will not have that data to come back. A lot of these tools that are sort of scratch work based do not have any method of continuous build when you return. And having a solution that enables you to come back, still have that data, but also have a clear reason to create an account at that point, just find it to be really tremendous. A great way to, again, push someone to go through the friction at that point rather than at the front end before they've even had to get any value out of the tool. So really found ProjectionLab an interesting sort of product approach to signing up for a product system. A second application I want to kind of talk about is post sign up and more the onboarding process. And I really want to talk about it again in the concept of tasting the batter as you bake the cake. And that's through this app called Kudos, which is also something I found in my not quite in my personal finance journey, but it's an application that enables you to put in all your different credit cards, debit cards, and knows all the different rewards and values that you get. And then as you come across different websites, it knows which one that you should use to maximize your rewards. Great sort of solution for maximizing different credit cards and making sure you're getting maximum sort of value and spend out of them. Now, Kudos goes through this process of an easy sort of sign up opportunity. But as you're going through the onboarding workflow, you have to take certain steps just to sort of incorporate it into your life, right? You can sort of think as you download a product, then you got to install the product, etc. There are these key steps that you have to do in order to use any solution. And for Kudos, those steps are built in with milestones that give you points. The Kudos app, the currency as it is like sort of points, right? That you can then use to redeem towards a gift card. So as you're just setting up the process of getting ready to go, and as you take their sort of demo trial approach, you get little bits of those point boosts back that you can then redeem towards a credit or a gift card rather. And I found it, not only is it a great UX that sort of incorporates all of that, it's not this sort of janky pop-up mode that's sort of pushing you around and highlighting different areas. It's a much more fluid user experience. But really along that process is actually showing you when you take an action, you can get this, what's called a boost, and you get these points. And you're tasting that, what I actually call tasting the batter while you're baking this cake. So by the end, when you fully set up the Kudos application, when you've set up the Chrome extension, when you've downloaded the app, when you've installed it on mobile, you not only have understood from the user experience how to use the application, but you've also collected a lot of Kudos points, and you've actually understood how this sort of system works as a whole contextually in your finance picture. And I just absolutely love how seamless of a process that was to go from not having anything to fully understanding your application and getting rewarded along the way, not being rewarded in this sort of pat on the back method, but really being rewarded in the value that you're trying to get out of the application, right? With Kudos, you're trying to get more points because, again, you think credit card points, right? That's what you're trying to get out of it, and that's what they're rewarding you with along the way. It'd be one thing if Kudos was a fitness trainer app, right? And along the way, they're giving you points that can be redeemed for a gift card. That would probably still work in some ways, but they're not at all aligned. One's like gift card points, one's of I'm trying to lose weight. That doesn't really track in terms of like the value, right? If I could somehow along the way of setting it up lose weight, that would be the value stream gain. What I find to be really interesting is in this scenario, as you're going through the setup process, you gain value of the item you're trying to achieve, or you're gaining value of what you're trying to maximize with this application. So a really interesting product setup workflow that, not only is a great user experience, but also a really awesome pathway, I think, to, again, tasting the batter as you're baking the cake. A really seamless workflow. Again, that's the Kudos app. So ProjectionLab, awesome, I think, for signing up. some great ways as well in the getting going as well. Again, ProjectionLab also has some, tasting the batter, where as you're putting in the information, they show the graph. I don't think it's quite as polished as the Kudos way, again, in that sort of onboarding workflow, but still quite good. So ProjectionLab, though, really awesome sign up and a pretty solid onboarding. Kudos, very easy sign up, phenomenal onboarding. The one thing that I think about is, okay, what happens when someone leaves? How do they come back? And I love the ever-growing presence of magic links and passkeys. So you've probably used possibly both of these, certainly one of them. Magic links are opportunities where if you have already signed up for an account, usually most frequently on mobile, where you can just type in your email address and they'll send a link to that email address and you tap it and it will log you in. There's no password. It sort of trusts the authenticity and security of your email address as the sort of acceptance criteria for, there's a product management term to throw it in, but as the acceptance criteria for allowing you to leverage the system in your profile. That's how a magic link tends to be used. The second method is passkeys, which are becoming far more present. And you can think of this as really like Face ID or Touch ID, for example, on your iPhone, sort of a biometric measure to ensure that you are who you say you are and not relying on passwords anymore to unlock your phone or beyond that. But these have become far more present now for actual websites. So I know PayPal, for example, you can leverage your face to log in. And it uses, if you're doing it on an iPhone, it'll just use Face ID. And same thing, I think Home Depot actually was the most recent one that I was quite surprised uses it. And these are great solutions because it makes that return process so seamless. If I, come across an application and I have forgotten my password or it didn't get saved properly in my password manager, or I reset it, but it saved like the reset link as the new URL rather than the login link, it causes a lot of problems, makes me not want to log in or use it, process to reset. Maybe I don't get the email. But a simple sort of Face ID unlock makes it so much easier. And so that's why passkeys are phenomenal and great for not just authentication and in keeping your application secure, but also for making that sign-up workflow so seamless. And I think a great overall measure for getting to value quickly. Again, if you have this sort of awesome sign-up workflow and then a great onboarding workflow, when someone comes back into that workflow, enabling them to get going quickly and maintaining that security is very important. The security and simplicity are oftentimes in conflict with one another because the idea of security is to create some level of friction so that only the right people can actually get past that friction. And how do you do that in a way that doesn't create a poor product experience? And I think passkeys are a great way to do that. You can think on the negative side from a practical experience, right? One of the ideas of creating a sort of email authentication, email verification check is that ensures that that email that person is signing up for, that they actually own that email, that it's not just a throwaway email necessarily. You can ensure that's validated through that process. A very good authentication measure, but a ton of friction. And if you use email sign-up and email verification before someone can log into their account as a step in your sign-up process, I'd highly encourage you to look at the analytics and see if you have a major drop-off there. I would be very surprised if you do not, because it is a major barrier to entry. And enabling people to sort of close down that barrier and that sort of friction point is, I think, phenomenal. What I find really interesting as well is magic links kind of turn that a little bit on its head, where yes, you go to use your email, but that's as the login procedure and method rather than as this verification point. It's a much more, I think, a seamless process to go through. You can also do, SMS text messaging is a very more common way as well, similar to the magic link, where you get a text message that you type in the code and logs you in that way, trusting that the owner of that phone, because you have a passcode on your phone that's probably using Face ID in some way, if you're able to actually access your phone, that means you are the true owner of your phone, and therefore you are the owner of that application, that account, correct? So magic links and passkeys, as well as this SMS messaging, I find to be really interesting ways to simplify the authentication process while at the same time making it a great product experience. And I'm going to kind of leave it at that, But I hope that across these three things, perhaps you've used similar tools or applications that you really enjoyed their sign-up workflow. I think sign-up is so interesting because it's the first experience people get with your application and is the do or die for essentially all aspects of, user activation. So would love to hear any instances of product applications that have phenomenal workflows. But again, from this one, ProjectionLab for sign up, Kudos for onboarding, and then any sort of usage of magic links, to really bundle that in with the SMS messaging protocol. But then also passkeys, which become more common for your sign-in process. I found that to be a tremendous sign-up and sign-in workflow. And I'm going to go ahead and probably stop my rambling here and cut this before it hits 16 minutes. But I do hope you have enjoyed this product musing and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in.